Welcome to the web series, The Hero's Call, where champions of safety and justice in the community are profiled. The series is co-hosted by attorney Mark Diller and his colleague, Dr. John Naranja. Dr. John is both an attorney and a doctor.
When we think about heroes, we think about the firefighters who are willing to risk all and run into a burning building, but we don't necessarily think about our teachers. We all know that right now in this country, we're experiencing an education crisis. And we know that the distance learning model that we've become used to is not going to work for all students. This summer, one school in Connecticut was willing to resume the in-person learning model before all others. Notwithstanding the fear and anxiety that was involved, a group of teachers voluntarily chose to go back into the school and resume in-person teaching. Today on the Hero's Call, we welcome Susan Velardi, one of those teachers. Susan, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me today.
So Susan, can you share with us a little bit about who you are and where you're from?
I'm originally from Maine, but I moved to Connecticut, married and moved to Connecticut. So I've been in education all my life, whether that be in the teaching capacity or preschool capacity. In recent years, I have obtained my own classroom. So I teach grade 2 at a public school in Middletown, Connecticut. I have a passion for teaching. It's not just a job. It's something that I feel I have to do and I want to do. And I can't imagine myself not going to work or not teaching in some kind of capacity. So
back in March, did your school shut down and go remote at the beginning of the pandemic?
We did, yes, Friday the 13th.
It's our understanding that when the summer came, that your school system decided to go back to in-person learning. Is that correct?
For that summer school program, yes, they decided we were going to go ahead with it. We had to sign up before March if we wanted to do, we wanted to teach for the summer program. And I kept asking about, is it happening, number one? And yes, it was continuing to happen. And is it going to be in person?
Why did the district decide to go back in-person learning, if you know, at that time?
I don't know. I think it's a big push in our district, has been very low in closing the achievement gap. So I think that was a big push to try to get these kids. They had already lost so much from the spring distance learning that I think they thought, we're going to try to make every effort we can to get as many kids as we can in this summer program in person so that we can kind of close that gap or begin to close that gap so there's not such a disparity in the fall.
Now, the teachers who went in over the summer, was that completely voluntary?
Yes. Yep, absolutely.
Susan, can you share with us, please, how were the children chosen to go back to school over the summer?
The students, it was the same as last year. Last year was the first year we did the Summer Literacy Academy. So it was the second year. So students are chosen based on sort of where they're at grade level wise and where they are. Like a lot of our students that are selected for the Summer Literacy Academy are already getting intervention skills for reading. They're getting those supports during the school year. So those are some of the students that get selected for the summer program. So we basically selected from their students because we had a reduced number for this summer. We didn't want as many kids in-house because of the pandemic. We wanted those smaller class sizes. So those numbers were reduced even more based on individual student needs. So, by scores and data, we chose students. And those students that would attend as well. So we had to go through a list of students and to talk to their families and be like, would you be willing to attend Summer Literacy Academy if it was in person, if it wasn't through online means.
So it was voluntary that the students came back?
Yes.
Did they have the option of doing it remote over the summer if they wanted?
Yes, we did have some students. We had 2 cohorts of students. We had A and B. We had A would come 1 week in person and B would come the next week in person. And when A was in session, B was online doing distance learning. We also had a group C, which was strictly the distance learning, online virtual learning.
Share with us, why did you choose to go back?
I I have a passion for teaching. It's what I do, and I wanted to maintain and keep connections with students in this community. So those are really important things to me, and I wanted to kind of show, I guess, kids that it's okay. We're all, as the cliche goes now, we're all in this together. And I wanted them to say, look, we're still here for you. We're still your teachers. We're still here if you need help with anything. And I wanted to show them that. Besides the fact it's just something that I do. Teaching is my passion and it's my life, and I wanted to be available for them.
Susan, what I want to do next is I want to kind of establish the scene of the summer literacy program where everybody's coming back into the classroom. So Susan, what are we looking at here?
Well, this is a picture of me. So we were given the option of you could wear a mask, which I have underneath, my own mask from home, a cloth mask. Then I have the face shield. Also, you can't see in this picture, but I had a divider on my desk as well. It was just a student desk. So we had those. We didn't have to wear the mask and the shield. It was our own comfort level. So why I have the shield on is this picture is a lot of times when I was working directly with students. I work a lot with sounds, so phonemes and segmenting. And so they need to be able to see my mouth. So I'm able to pull down that mask just for a moment, and I have that face shield up so they can see my mouth and how it's moving. And there's a little more clarity in my words.
What are we looking at here?
So this is my particular workspace. You can see there, I have my Chromebook there, so I can connect with those kids remotely. I also have that divider that I spoke of. So it's a 3-way divider with that visible screen right through the middle there. Across, you can see the 2 desks that I had set up. So I would work with 2 kids that sat across from me, no more than 2, usually in person, and they would bring their dividers. So I would have my divider and they would have their dividers with them. They would also have their masks on. This is the time when they would have that I would feel very comfortable in removing that cloth mask and having my face shield on.
So when you are in person with these 2 students in front of you, are there also distance learners at the same time?
Yes, so sometimes there were, and sometimes there weren't, depending on the student's skills. So, I had a group of students working, let's say, silent E in particular. So I might have one who's doing distance learning, or maybe they're just totally distance learning in group C who needed that skill of silent E. And I might have 1 or 2 also present in person.
Let's take a look at the next photo.
So this is arrival. In the morning, the teachers would all go outside and wait for the kids to get dropped off. Some of the student in this vehicle here, you can see is getting dropped off a personal car. So that's a parent drop off. We also did have busing. The buses, I believe that the seats were staggered on the bus. So this student is getting a thermal temperature scan. All students were scanned prior to even leaving their vehicle.
Looks like Dad in this photo looks pretty happy. What were your observations of, with the parents in respect to having children coming back to in-person class for the summer literacy program?
Yeah, I think some of the parents definitely were really apprehensive, especially that first day, that, getting that temperature check and kind of that deep breath, like, oh, is my son or daughter okay? They're getting their temperature checked, and oh my gosh, I hope it comes back okay. Most parents seemed pretty good with going in, after they got that thermal scan done, because that's, can make anyone apprehensive. We had to get scanned too as teachers going in, so I was a little nervous. I felt fine, and I knew I was probably okay, but you're getting your temperature checked by someone else, and you're just hoping it's not above what that number is. So there was apprehensiveness on the parents' part, and I think some of the parents were excited to come back and ready to see their kids learning and engaged again, and be part of a school system, of a learning environment again.
Can you describe some of the interactions that you had, and what conversations you had with parents as they were, as you said, they were apprehensive? What were you telling the parents?
I didn't actually greet the parents. Our site director greeted parents, and the nurse who is in this picture here greeted the parents. So the apprehensiveness came from visual through when I was doing the online learning. The parents are kind of like nervous about, because they can see the environment that I'm teaching in as their student is on distance learning. You see the parents go by in the background, if the student is sitting at the kitchen table or something, you would hear some parents, their concerns and, just kind of the tone of their voice more so, because like I said, I wasn't specifically greeting them because parents stayed in the car.
Did the students have similar concerns that in your observations when they got into the classroom?
The students were excited to be there, honestly. I think some were nervous about maybe just going back to school, nervous about having to wear the mask and how long they were going to have to wear it for, similar to first day back to school, except they all have masks on.
Were you able to observe any kind of differences in either learning or how the kids were interacting, distinguishing between those kids who were actually in person in class and then those you were teaching with distance learning?
Absolutely. To go back a little bit when greeting, I had a student that I actually had in my classroom last year in my physical space before we shut down for COVID-19. And he wanted to come up to me and give me a big hug. He ran up to me and I said, "Oh, no." I'm like, "You have to, stop." I said, "We can do an air high five." So that was tough to kind of handle that. But as far as online distance learning, when the kids were there, I had one student in particular that was solely a distance learner. And he wanted to be in school. And so, he was talking to his mom in the background, "Well, how come I can't go?" And she was, calming with him. And she's like, "Well, I don't think we're ready as a family yet to have you go." And really providing him with supports. And he wanted to be there. He could see that we were learning and that we were kind of with our friends, even though we were in a distance kind of learning atmosphere, we were still in the same physical space, same classroom, and the same kids every day, Monday through Friday. And then of course, switching a different group of kids that next week. So you saw those kids online that kind of wanted to be there. And then some kids that I think struggled to get online, to want to learn that way, that they didn't seem like they wanted to be there online. So I don't know if that meant that they would rather have been there in person or if they just didn't want to be learning during the summer or not. But kind of those both cases where those online learners either just didn't want to learn in that kind of a way, or they wanted to be in the environment with everyone else.
Great. Can we see the next photo? What are we looking at here?
Yeah, this is at arrival time. So when the students arrive in the morning, they show up. So we have the nurse there on the left, and that's our school resource officer on the right. And she was always there just to kind of make sure, for safety reasons, as normal procedure SRO would do in a school, just to make sure everything's running smoothly and everyone's safe. So we line up by group. That teacher in the background holding the yellow sign is actually my co-teacher for the summer that I work with. So these students were students from my class. So they were all lined up, ready to go inside. So we get them lined up and then we go single file inside, and then they proceed through a second scanner when they get inside, which is similar to, it's a tablet on a tripod basically, and it scans your entire thermal body temperature, and it pops up a little green band if your core temperature is okay. I didn't have it pop up negative ever, so I'm guessing that a red band would show up and tell you if your temperature is maybe too high. But I think those first thermal checks outside alleviated any of those triggers going off. This tablet also would be able to identify if you had a mask on. So if you tried to go by the tablet with your mask down, it would say in a lovely computer voice, "Please wear a mask." And of course, there were a few glitches with that. If you wore like a mask that matched your skin tone, for instance, it wouldn't think that you had a mask on. It would think that you needed to put one on, because I had a peachy colored one on one day, and it didn't. It told me to wear a mask. It didn't think I had one on. So.
Okay. So seeing the teachers in the background of this photo, what were your observations and interactions with the teachers as far as going back to in-person teaching? Were they sharing any apprehension or anxiety with you having in-person classes?
Some of them were, but like we mentioned earlier, it was voluntary. There were some teachers that decided not to do the Summer Literacy Academy because it was in person. So we did have some dropouts, so to speak. So most of them were pretty comfortable with it. Some of them, weren't comfortable with wearing just a mask, so they wore the mask and the shield. Other than that, there really wasn't a lot of apprehension on the part of the teachers. I think the apprehension fell more in lines with how are we going to present this curriculum or this learning to the kids at the same time, those that are at home and those that are in front of us.
What are we looking at here?
This is one of my co-teachers. She's doing individual reading with this student behind the divider or the partition.
So Susan, the CDC has put out some data and some conclusions that with the pandemic and how things are going, there's been an increase in mental health issues. What have your observations been in the classroom as far as how people are responding or students are responding to being able to get back into class?
Yeah, I think the summer literacy guide definitely showed that you still have some parents that are very, very anxious about sending their kids. So we did provide that option of distance learning for those parents. So, and those parents that were distance learning clearly continued to show their apprehension, even though they saw that the program worked and we had students coming in, and that week A worked, and then week B worked, and then work A and B worked again. So, knock on wood, it was successful. So I think hopefully that helped with those parents that were doing the distance learning, that it can be done and it can be safe in that physical space. Definitely, I think that it has to be a limited number of students in that physical space. I can't imagine having a full classroom of students, say 20, 22 students in one classroom. You just can't maintain that social distancing for that. So I think I saw a lot of apprehension from those parents still at home. And again, they'll have that choice in the fall, whether they want to stay home if they're ready. And I think that parents should have that personal choice.
You may have answered this a little bit before, but in looking at those students who were in person and comparing them to those who were doing distance learning, was there any differences that you could observe in terms of their emotional state and how they were responding to whatever level of learning that they were experiencing?
Well, I think that the kids, oftentimes we ask the kids online and in person how they were feeling as part of kind of a morning meeting, kind of getting to know you thing every day. We always made sure to ask how the kids were feeling. And I think the kids that were at school physically were more happy, more engaged, more kind of socialized, if that's the right word. They were experiencing time with students that they hadn't since March. Whereas you had the other students at home that saw that, you have two students, albeit they're sitting separately from each other and they have, dividers around them, but the students at home are like, hey, they're there with a group of other students and I want that. I want to be there. And I respect, obviously, parents' choices to keep their children at home. I have children of my own. So I definitely respect the fact that they want their student to stay home, but I think it was good for the students at home to see that the students at school were okay and they were enjoying their time together, even though it was more distant physically than what they would normally be used to at school.
Now you say you have children. Were there any concerns from your family or your children about you going back to in-person learning with students?
My sixth grader, she asked me what it was like, kind of like what the routines were. And so she clearly was curious about what maybe her environment was going to look like this fall. So she was, well, do you have to do this? And do you have to do that? And what else do you have to do? And so I explained to her what my day kind of looked like and sounded like, and some of the things that I do that normally you wouldn't have to do in the classroom, like spraying down when the students were sitting across from me physically. When they were done in that space, I sprayed the desk down and the chairs down, and you wait a few minutes and you wipe down the desk and the chairs with paper towels. You throw those out, and you make sure those are air dried before you have your next group of students come and sit there. We're all just trying our best, and we're all just trying to do it for our students.